My beloved child, something happened last night that made someone completely rethink everything they believed about you. They had been watching you from a distance, listening to what people said about you, noticing the way you speak, the way you remain quiet when others expect you to react, the way you sometimes smile even when there is something much deeper happening behind that smile. And last night, one particular detail came to light that changed the entire picture. The person who discovered it could not believe it. They looked at everything they thought they knew about you and suddenly realized that they had made one enormous mistake. They thought you were innocent because you appeared calm. They thought you were easy to understand because you rarely explain yourself. They thought your silence meant you had nothing to hide. But the truth is far more fascinating. You have been hiding something, but not the kind of secret people may immediately imagine. You have been hiding the strength of your mind, the depth of your observation, and the incredible ability you have to understand people without announcing that you understand them. That is why the title of this message is so important. You look so innocent, but in reality, you may be the biggest troublemaker in a way nobody expected. Not because you want to hurt anyone, not because you enjoy creating problems, but because your presence has a strange effect on people. You make them reveal themselves. You make people question their own intentions. You make people notice truths they were trying to ignore. And sometimes, without saying a single word, you completely change the atmosphere around you. Someone realized this last night, and that realization is exactly why you need to listen carefully now. Don't skip, because the first thing they discovered about you was only the beginning. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and the final revelation connects every strange reaction you have noticed recently. There is a reason certain people become nervous around you even when you are being completely polite. There is a reason someone can talk confidently with everyone else but suddenly become careful with their words when you enter the room. There is a reason someone who once underestimated you has recently started watching every little detail about you. They have noticed something that you may not even recognize about yourself. You do not need to raise your voice to have an impact. You do not need to prove yourself to control a situation. You do not need to tell people what you know. Your greatest power may be that you simply observe. You listen. You remember. You connect details. You notice changes in tone, expressions, pauses, unusual behavior, and tiny contradictions that other people overlook. Someone thought you were simply being quiet. Last night they realized you were paying attention. And that difference is enormous. Imagine someone believing they have completely fooled you, only to discover that you understood what was happening long before they realized you had noticed anything. That is the kind of revelation surrounding you now. Someone may have assumed that because you were kind, you were unaware. Because you were patient, you were weak. Because you forgave, you forgot. Because you smiled, you did not understand. But they misunderstood you. Your innocence is not ignorance. Your kindness is not weakness. Your silence is not emptiness. Your calmness is not surrender. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who has already understood everything. And last night, someone finally saw that side of you. There is another reason this revelation feels so powerful. For a long time, someone may have been telling themselves a story about who you are. Perhaps they imagined you as predictable. Perhaps they believed they could easily figure out what you would do next. Maybe they thought you would always respond exactly as expected, always explain yourself, always defend yourself, always rush to prove that you were right. But you did something completely different. You stopped explaining. You became more selective. You began protecting your peace. You started watching instead of reacting. And that silence created questions in someone else's mind. What does this person know? Why are they so calm? Why are they not reacting? Why did they suddenly stop chasing explanations? Why do they seem to understand more than they are saying? Those questions have been growing. And last night they reached a point where someone could no longer ignore them. Don't skip this part, because this is where the story becomes much more interesting. Someone looked back at an old conversation with you and noticed something they had completely overlooked. You had already hinted at the truth. You had already noticed what was happening. You simply chose not to expose it. That realization can be more shocking than any dramatic confrontation. Think about it. Imagine discovering that the person you believed was unaware had actually understood the situation from the beginning and quietly decided to let everyone reveal themselves naturally. That is what someone may now be realizing about you. You did not need to chase anyone. You did not need to interrogate anyone. You did not need to demand answers. You allowed time to do what time always does, reveal what people cannot keep hidden forever. And now the evidence is beginning to appear. The strange behavior. The sudden changes. The unexpected messages. The unusual silence. The person who once seemed completely confident may now be reconsidering everything. They may even be asking themselves whether you knew more than they thought. And here is the part that makes this revelation so emotional. The person who underestimated you may not actually dislike you. In fact, they may be fascinated by you. They may have become curious because they cannot understand how you remain composed while everyone else is trying to figure out what is happening. Your calmness has become a mystery to them. They expected an ordinary reaction, but you gave them something they could not predict. You gave them silence. And silence can make the imagination louder than words. Stay till the end, because there is one particular moment from last night that explains why this person suddenly changed their opinion of you. Something huge is waiting for you, and it is not about becoming someone you are not. It is about finally understanding the effect you already have on people. Now listen carefully, because there is a hidden layer to this story. Someone may have been calling you innocent, sweet, harmless, or easygoing, but privately they were also wondering whether there was another side to you. They could not understand how you could be so gentle and yet so difficult to manipulate. That contradiction is what has been confusing them. You can care deeply and still say no. You can forgive someone and still remember the lesson. You can love someone and still walk away from behavior that does not respect you. You can remain peaceful without allowing someone else to decide your worth. That is what makes you difficult for certain people to understand. They may have expected your kindness to make you permanently available. They may have mistaken your patience for unlimited tolerance. They may have thought your forgiving nature meant there would never be consequences. But something changed. You started seeing patterns instead of isolated moments. You stopped judging people only by what they said and started noticing what they repeatedly did. And that is when your so-called innocence became something much more powerful. You became aware. Last night, someone may have had a conversation where your name came up unexpectedly. At first, they may have laughed or dismissed the subject. Then someone mentioned a detail about you that caused the entire mood to change. Suddenly, the person who had been speaking confidently became quiet. Why? Because the detail confirmed something they had secretly suspected. You had noticed more than they thought. You had understood more than you admitted. You had seen the difference between someone's words and their actions. And that is when they realized that you were not the person they had imagined. You were not the easiest person to deceive. You were not someone who needed every answer handed to you. You were someone who could sit quietly, gather information, and eventually reach your own conclusion. Don't skip, because the next part explains why this realization could completely change the way someone approaches you. They may become more careful around you. They may choose their words differently. They may suddenly stop playing certain games. They may even begin treating you with a level of respect they never showed before. And strangely, you may notice it without knowing why. You might feel that someone's energy toward you has changed. Their messages may become more thoughtful. Their behavior may become less careless. Their confidence around you may become slightly different. That is not necessarily your imagination. Sometimes people change their behavior when they realize the person in front of them is far more perceptive than they assumed, but there is something even deeper beneath all of this. Your greatest secret may not be what you have done. It may be what you refuse to do. You had opportunities to expose people. You had moments when you could have responded sharply. You had situations where you could have revealed exactly what you knew. Yet you held back. That restraint may have confused people more than any confrontation could have. They were expecting you to react, but you chose peace. They were expecting you to reveal everything, but you remained silent. They were expecting you to chase them for an explanation, but you stepped back. And eventually, that silence forced them to confront themselves. This is why the word trouble in the title carries a completely different meaning. You may be the biggest trouble for anyone who wants to control the narrative around you, because you do not always play the role they expect. They cannot easily provoke you into saying something you will regret. They cannot easily make you abandon your values. They cannot easily predict when you will speak and when you will remain silent. You have become unpredictable in the healthiest possible way. You no longer feel obligated to react just because someone expects a reaction. And that is powerful. Someone may have discovered this last night when they expected you to respond to something, but you did not. They may have waited for your reaction. Nothing happened. That silence said more than a long speech could have said. It communicated that you were no longer interested in proving yourself to everyone. You know who you are. You know what you have experienced. You know what you have survived. And you do not need every person to understand your story. Stay till the end, because there is a reason this realization is arriving now rather than months ago. Something huge is waiting for you, and it involves a person who has been looking at you through completely different eyes. They may have once thought you were simply innocent. Now they are wondering whether they completely underestimated your intelligence. They may have once believed you needed protection. Now they are realizing you know how to protect your own peace. They may have once thought you were easy to read. Now they are discovering that your quietness contains many layers, and then came the moment last night that changed everything. Someone was presented with a piece of information about you. It could have been something you said months ago, something you did when nobody thought you were paying attention, or something small that seemed meaningless at the time. But when they connected it with everything happening now, the entire picture became clear. They realized that you had been consistent all along. You were not pretending to be innocent. You were not secretly plotting anything. You were simply refusing to reveal every thought that passed through your mind. There is a huge difference. People sometimes assume that someone who stays quiet must be unaware. But sometimes silence is simply a choice. You may have learned that not every truth needs to be announced immediately. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every person deserves access to your private thoughts. And that lesson has made you stronger. The person who realized this last night may now be replaying old moments with you. They may remember a look on your face, a short sentence you said, a moment when you suddenly became quiet, or a time when you seemed to know something before anyone told you. Those memories are taking on a new meaning. What once looked ordinary now looks like evidence of your awareness. What once seemed like innocence now looks like self-control. And what once seemed like passivity now looks like patience. Don't skip. Because there is one thing you need to understand about people who underestimate you. They often reveal themselves while trying to figure you out. They may ask questions they think are harmless. They may test your reactions. They may watch how you respond to certain situations. But if you remain centered, they eventually expose what they were trying to discover. You do not have to become suspicious of everyone. You do not have to assume every person has bad intentions. The real lesson is much simpler. Trust your observations, maintain your boundaries, and do not allow someone else's assumptions to define you. Something huge is waiting for you because your story is not ending with someone discovering your secret. It is beginning with you discovering your own strength. There is also a surprising emotional side to this revelation. The person who underestimated you may now feel embarrassed about how they judged you. They may remember moments when they treated you as though you were incapable of understanding what was happening. They may regret dismissing your instincts. They may wish they had listened when you tried to communicate something important. And perhaps the most difficult realization for them is that you never needed revenge. You simply needed clarity. Once you understood the truth, your attachment to the confusion disappeared. That is why someone may feel that they are losing control of the situation. They are not necessarily losing you. They are losing their ability to predict your response. And those are two very different things. You have reached a point where you can care without chasing. You can remember without returning to the same pattern. You can forgive without giving unlimited access. You can wish someone well without allowing them to disturb your peace. This is the hidden transformation that people around you may be noticing. They see the same face, the same voice, the same smile, but something underneath has changed. Your standards have changed. Your awareness has changed. Your patience has become more intentional. You are no longer giving every situation the same amount of energy. And someone noticed this last night. They realized that the innocent person they thought they knew had developed a much stronger sense of self. That realization may be uncomfortable for someone who benefited from the old version of you, but it is liberating for you. Stay till the end, because the next revelation is even more important. Something huge is waiting for you, and it may explain why a certain person has recently become unusually quiet. Their silence may not mean they stopped caring. It may mean they are trying to understand how to approach you now that they realize they cannot approach you the same way as before. They know something has changed. They can feel it. And the strange part is that you may not have intentionally done anything dramatic. You simply stopped abandoning yourself to make other people comfortable. Think about how powerful that is. You did not need a dramatic announcement. You did not need to prove that you were different. You simply changed the way you responded to what no longer felt right. Someone noticed. They may have expected you to remain exactly as you were forever, always forgiving, always explaining, always available, always trying to keep everyone comfortable. But people grow. Experiences teach. Time reveals. And sometimes the most important transformation happens so quietly that other people notice it before you fully understand it yourself. This is why someone may now be fascinated by you. They are looking at you and realizing that your innocence and your intelligence can exist together. Your softness and your strength can exist together. Your kindness and your boundaries can exist together. You do not have to become cold to become wise. You do not have to become harsh to become strong. You do not have to stop caring to stop being manipulated. That is the lesson hidden inside everything that happened last night. And perhaps this is the revelation you needed to hear. The thing that makes you trouble is not that you create chaos. It is that you can no longer be easily controlled by chaos. When confusion appears, you observe. When pressure appears, you pause. When someone tries to rush you into a decision, you think. When someone expects you to react emotionally, you breathe. That is why your calmness can feel intimidating to someone who relies on reactions. They do not know what to do when you refuse to play the role they assigned to you. Don't skip now. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, and the final part of this message will reveal what someone may be realizing about your future. Because this is not only about what happened last night. It is about what happens next. Someone is beginning to understand that you cannot be judged by appearances alone. You may look innocent, but your experiences have taught you things that cannot be seen from the outside. You may appear relaxed, but your mind can be incredibly active. You may smile, but that does not mean you have forgotten every lesson life has given you. You may be gentle, but you know when something is no longer healthy for your peace. This combination makes you difficult to categorize. And people often become fascinated by what they cannot categorize. They want to know what is behind the smile. They want to understand why you remain calm. They want to know how you can move forward without needing everyone to agree with you. Someone may even be asking themselves whether you have always been this perceptive or whether life simply taught you to become this way. The answer may be both. You were always observant. But experience sharpened that observation. You were always caring, but experience taught you where to place that care. You were always capable of understanding people, but experience taught you that understanding someone does not mean tolerating everything they do. That is a powerful distinction. And last night, someone finally saw it. They may have been looking for the real you, expecting to discover some shocking hidden flaw. Instead, they discovered something completely different. The real you is far more aware than the version of you they created in their imagination. That is the twist. They were searching for something to prove their assumptions, but they found evidence that their assumptions were wrong. Don't skip, because this is where the entire message comes together. Someone may have called you innocent, but they now understand that innocence does not mean naivety. Someone may have called you harmless, but they now understand that you can still be firm. Someone may have called you predictable, but they now realize that you have your own mind. And someone may have thought they knew you,